man and a woman decide to fake a relationship to make their cheating spouses jealous. However, they soon realize that they've developed genuine feelings for one another. Before leaving for his mother-in-law's wedding, Tom begs his daughter Chloe to leave her favorite blanket at home because he doesn't want it inside the car. Meanwhile, Larry and his teenage son from a previous marriage, Mitch, wait for his wife Tish to finish doing her makeup for his Uncle Phil's wedding. Concurrently, Tom evades cars on the busy highway to retrieve Chloe's blanket after it flies out the window. Later, the family arrives at the church just as the ceremony ends, so Maria congratulates her mother, Edie, and her new husband, Phil. During the reception, Tom curiously watches Tish as she enters the ballroom. After the nephew congratulates the couple, Phil tells Larry that he's always welcome to work for him at the garbage company. While her husband makes a speech, Tish sees Tom giving her flirty looks from across the room. After the toast, the inebriated groom pulls down his pants and moons the guests, much to their delight. Later, Tish, a makeup consultant, brings out her sample box and gives the female guests advice on what color lipstick they need. Outside, Tom, a car salesman, confronts Kevin for canceling his purchase, which the latter explains was due to the vehicle breaking down on the day he bought it. Before a scuffle ensues, the other guests separate the men, and after Tom walks away, Tish follows him. In another room, Mitch spooks the kids with a scary story about a serial killer who attacks during weddings. After the festivities, the guests gather outside to send off the newlyweds as they drive off in a red car. Mitch tells his father that he can't find Tish anywhere and he has plans tonight. So Larry asks his cousin to give the son a ride while he waits for his wife to return. When the other guests leave, Maria and Larry realize they're the only ones left, and neither knows where their spouses are. They decide to return inside, where the woman says she is a legal secretary and learns that he teaches ballroom dancing. Because she finds it hard to believe that he's a dance teacher, he hands her his card and says she's entitled to a free lesson. Then Larry dances with Chloe, and Maria commends him for his effortless ways with children. Suddenly, their spouses arrive, and they explain that the salesman took Tish on a test drive in his car, but it broke down and they lost track of time. That evening, Tom tells Maria that once he knew the other couple were looking to buy a new car, he proceeded to convince the woman because he knows it's the most effective way to secure a sale. When the wife remarks that he's always had a way with women, he thinks she doesn't believe that nothing happened between him and Tish. So Maria sarcastically says she trusts him because he's her husband, implying a history of infidelity. Meanwhile, despite Tish's affectionate behavior and assurance that she'd never hurt him, a visibly despondent Larry seems doubtful. Suddenly, Mitch barges into the apartment and goes directly to his bedroom. The stepmother teases that the teen's having girl problems, specifically about the girl on the blue bicycle that she sees him talking to after soccer practice. However, Mitch says he doesn't need her input because she isn't his mother. So Larry steps in to defuse the situation and asks Tish to give him and his son some privacy. The next day, Chloe tells her mother that a boy in school, Lenny, keeps bullying her and saying he's in love with her. Maria advises the child to be nice to the classmate, who promises to do so. Later, Tom goes around the city to tell his multiple mistresses that he's ending their relationship. Eventually, he drops by the cosmetic store where Tish works and asks her to keep mum regarding what happened last night because he's decided to clean up his act for good, confirming that they cheated on their spouses. The insulted woman starts to walk away, but he asks an inappropriate question regarding her undergarments and says he'd like to see her tonight. Concurrently, Maria listens intently as she takes down notes of a client ranting about cutting off his wife's hair after catching her cheating. At noon, she stops by Larry's dance studio hoping to speak to him about their spouses. At the food market, the woman mentions the possibility of Tom and Tish sleeping together last night. At first, he says he believes in his wife's freedom of choice, but seconds later erupts in anger and admits he's furious. After he calms down, Larry apologizes to Maria and acknowledges how difficult it must have been for her to talk to him today. Later, he asks what they should do about their spouses, and she jokes that they should shave their heads, bemusing him. That evening, Tom gives his wife an unprompted gift and prepares to cook them dinner. Then, the woman mentions she spoke to Larry that afternoon, and the information worries the husband, but he pretends like he doesn't care. Days later, the entire family gathers at Edie and Phil's home to watch Mitch's edited wedding video. However, their laughter quickly turns to confusion at the budding filmmaker's choice to intersperse upsetting images of real-world problems in the montage. When a clip of Tom and Tish sneaking off during the reception plays on the TV, the philandering man rushes to turn it off. Moments later, he confronts Larry for having lunch with his wife, so the latter pointedly says they didn't have lunch because his feet broke down, making them a little late to get back. Then, the guilty man leans close to Tish's ear and says their spouses know what they did. After lunch, Maria finds the unconscious Phil on a hammock and asks Larry for help. Unfortunately, despite the nephew's best efforts to resuscitate the old man, he perishes. At the cemetery, Larry's father, Vincent, arrives to attend his brother's burial. Then, he takes out 2 adult magazines from his bag and gives them to his grandson. After the funeral, Vincent apologizes to Edie for missing the wedding and explains his hernia acted up. Separately, Tish and Tom excuse themselves from the wake because they need to go back to work. However, the woman calls the store and says she'll need the rest of the day off. Then, the man picks her up in his car seconds later. Concurrently, Vincent comforts the widow and shares that he's learned to live with loneliness after he lost his wife of 33 years. Edie mentions that all she has left of Phil now is his share of the garbage company and adds that she doesn't even know how to run the business. After the wake, Larry takes Maria to the dock and shows her his dilapidated boat which he plans on fixing so he can sail all over the world. Then, he buys the woman a hat after finding out how much her husband hates when she wears them. Meanwhile, Tom disdainfully listens as a coworker smugly tells him that he's about to make a sale, inching him closer to the ultimate prize for the best salesman, a trip to Las Vegas. Moments later, he sees Larry drop off his hat-wearing wife at the car dealership. The next day, Tom tells Tish that he's certain their spouses are having an affair. The woman doesn't believe her husband would ever sleep with someone like Maria, but he says he's more concerned about them having genuine feelings for each other. Concurrently, Larry whisks the legal secretary away from work to take her out to lunch by a lake. While resting on a floating dock, the man confesses how much he'd like to kiss her, but because she knows neither of them have ever cheated on their spouses, it's a bad idea to start now. As they dry off by the fire, they ultimately decide that they're better off as friends even though they harbor mutual romantic feelings. Before they part ways, the pair agree they'll accidentally run into each other at a restaurant on Saturday night. At the restaurant, Maria invites Larry's family to their table so they can all dine together. When Tish sees her husband and the other woman intently looking into each other's eyes, she excuses herself to the restroom. The legal secretary follows and hears her crying in a stall, so she apologizes and admits she and Larry aren't having an affair and they've been playing a game to get back at her and Tom. Later that night, Tish runs ahead into the apartment, changes into lingerie, and makes love to her husband. Weeks later, at another relative's wedding, Vincent switches up the name card so he and Edie sit together, and his son does the same thing with his and Maria's seat placements. When Tish sees her husband laughing and talking to the other woman, she dances with other men, so Maria tells Larry to join his wife on the dance floor. However, when he stands up to do so, Tom grabs the makeup consultant and they dance instead. To avoid the tense situation, Larry asks the legal secretary if she'd like to take a walk outside. Maria asks the man what he thinks they'd be like as a married couple, and he jokes and says she'll probably want to smother him with a pillow after 3 months because he talks too much. However, she doesn't think so because she enjoys their conversations. Meanwhile, Tish tells Tom that their spouses are in love, so the man tries to comfort her by saying that she's nothing like Maria. At first, the woman takes this as a compliment, until he adds that he thinks Maria is too good for him, offending his mistress. When they return to the reception, the drunk car salesman punches Kevin. He tries to swing at Larry, but he falls on the cake instead and passes out. Later, Edie tells Vincent to take her car because she'll stay the night with her daughter's family. Then, the old man says he'll bring back her vehicle tomorrow on the condition that she has dinner with him. Although the older woman doesn't think she and her late husband's brother are compatible, his disarming confidence and charm cause her to reconsider. Concurrently, Maria tells Larry that they need to stop seeing each other because even though they haven't so much as shared a kiss, their spouses think otherwise and it'll only get worse. Before parting ways, the man tells the legal secretary that he's gonna miss her. When he gets in the back seat, his inebriated wife asks if he wants her to leave because she'll do so if he tells her to. Inside the house, Edie confronts her daughter about her inappropriate friendship with Larry. Maria insists that nothing's happened between them, but the mother knows she's thought about it. The daughter asks if it's so wrong of her to want happiness, so the older woman says she needs to be absolutely sure that she's willing to risk changing her entire life for the dance teacher. The next day, Maria sees Larry on the other side of the train station platform, and she rushes to join him. Eventually, they ride his motorcycle to a remote lakeside cottage where they finally kiss and make love for the first time. During the deed, the man accidentally breaks one lamp, so the woman impulsively kicks the one on her bedside table and happily exclaims that she's always wanted to do something like that her entire life. Later, the pair sneak out of the cottage while only covering their clothless bodies with a blanket, and they run to the water to go skinny dipping. Meanwhile, Mitch helps his grandfather prepare for his date with Edie. That evening, Maria calls to tell her mother that she won't be home until later tonight, and then Chloe informs her that Lenny scratched her at school today. When she returns home, Tom says her office called and wondered why she didn't come in for work. Because he deduced that the wife spent the day with Larry, he defeatedly asks if she loves the other man, and she says yes. Before leaving the room, the man informs Maria that Chloe's teacher called regarding an urgent matter they need to talk about as soon as possible. Hours later, the car salesman calls Larry's home phone, but Vincent answers. When he says that he'll kill him if he ever sees his wife again, the old man thinks it's his brother's ghost threatening him because he dated Edie. Then, Larry walks in and asks his father why he has a scared look on his face. When Vincent explains what he thinks happened, the son assures him it was just a dream. Moments later, Tish appears with packed suitcases, so she explains that she isn't leaving because she's mad, but because she'd like to give the man the freedom to make up his mind. At school, Maria asks the teacher about the scratch on her daughter's arm, so the woman takes her inside the classroom so they can talk about what's really been happening. At the car dealership, the makeup consultant tells the salesman that she finally left Larry. After they make love, Tish notices he seems different, and he points out that doing the deed doesn't feel the same now that she's single. Offended, the woman realizes that Tom's one of those married men who only enjoys the thrill of sleeping with unavailable women, and she storms off. That evening, Maria visits Larry at the dock and sadly tells him that they can't see each other anymore because she needs to focus on Chloe, especially since she found out that her daughter was the one bullying Lenny this whole time. The teacher told her that she thinks the girl's acting out because she doesn't get enough attention at home. Later, before Vincent leaves, he tells his son that if he truly loves Maria, he should follow his heart. For the next few months, the legal secretary and the car salesman try to salvage their marriage and spend more time with their daughter. Meanwhile, Larry distracts himself by fixing up his boat. While putting away the Christmas decorations, Maria sees the hat Larry bought her that fateful day at the dock. One day at the junkyard, Vincent kisses Edie and professes his love. Weeks later at their wedding, Mitch introduces his girlfriend Kathy to Tish, and the stepmother gives the teen a cheeky smile. Seeing each other after many months, Maria averts her gaze from Larry's. At the reception, Tish asks her ex-husband if he knows why she married him, and he shakes his head. She says it's because his eyes look like those of a man who would never hurt her. Concerned, Larry asks if she thinks he ever hurt her, so the woman assures him that he never did. Later, the dance teacher walks over to Maria and asks her to dance. Tom intervenes and orders him to leave his wife alone, so Larry tells her to spend the rest of her life with him. The furious car salesman squares up, prompting Maria to finally put her foot down and imply that their marriage is over. Then, she and Larry slow dance and look deep into each other's eyes. Months later, the happy couple finally take their kids on the boat and sail away.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.